Srijana, this is a silly question, but when I'm screen sharing,
Mm-hmm.
what do you just see me, or do you see my whole screen?
I see you at the same time I see the screen as well.
Okay.
I think we can start.
Okay. All right. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Hopefully, if there are some people joining us late, or if you have friends that you want to text and remind to join, we are happy to have you today. I am Mallisa Takacs. I am a school counselor. I've probably seen some of you already. I'm a school counselor based in Switzerland, previously in Singapore, and I work with the Global Shapers Timpu Hub and the College and Career Readiness team on putting these presentations together and just hosting different speakers. And I am the speaker today. So thank you for coming. And I look forward to sharing information with you about studying in the UK, Netherlands, and Europe. And just so you know, I will try to keep, excuse me, the actual presentation to about 35 to 40 minutes, and just go through the basic pieces that I want everybody to know today about these countries. And then, as always, make myself available after the call, and we will have this recording posted to our YouTube channel, and we'll share through our social media as well. And I've tried to include the most important helpful resources that I think will help you if you're looking into studying in these countries. But as always, you can follow up with myself or any member of the Global Shapers Timpu Hub team, and we would be happy to answer any questions and connect in the future. So thank you again for joining us today. Why does this happen when I can't advance? Oh, I got it, I think. I think I have to have my mouse on a certain spot. Anybody who knows me knows I cannot advance through presentations very easily. Just a reminder of where you can find us. Like I said, we will upload the video recording onto our YouTube channel. We have all of the previous presentations there as well. Also, during the presentation today, if you have questions that come up during the presentation, just put them in the chat. And then we're also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook as well. And that's where we try to connect with people, share our presentations, and just information that we want to get out to you. We also have our Mighty Network platform. I didn't paste that here. Most of you are aware of it, but maybe one of Srijana or one of the other Global Shapers can post that in the chat box at some point during the presentation, so that if you haven't followed that, you can. I skipped one, so let me go backwards as well. Just a note on some upcoming presentations. So we do have 4 more presentations between now and in May. We have in February, understanding test optional admissions in the US in particular, March 1st. I'm really excited about this topic because even though I've been a long-term counselor, I don't really know a lot about this topic. So I am really interested in understanding more about community colleges and transfer admissions. And the presenter on this one is a really influential person in the world of university advising, and will be a great resource, I think, for anybody who's able to join. Transfer admissions relates to anyone who's in university now and who is looking to transfer to another institution, just to clarify. So that could also involve some people who are already studying in university. And so we want to definitely get the word out on that one for sure. April 12th, US admissions from A to Z, and then May 10th, I'm really excited about this one too, writing the winning personal statement. Any suggestions, questions, anything you all need, please, again, be sure to take down my information and never hesitate to reach out. I'm here to help you. That's what I'm here for. So I'm going to start with study in the UK, and then we will move on to the Netherlands and the rest of Europe. And like I said, just previously noting, I really have tried to make what is a lot of information. It's really dense information when you're talking about these countries in particular. And so I've tried to get down to the very basic need to know essentials of, if you're even interested in studying in these countries, what would that look like? What is the structure? How much is that going to cost? And can I get funding? And so I have tried to just go to the very basic pieces of information, and we'll try to explain that these basic pieces of information as well as I can. So in the UK is considered, when we talk about the UK, that's England, Scotland, Wales, and Great Britain, sort of the bigger part where London is. And there are over 100 large public universities, and they're all English speaking, of course, because that's the main language in the UK. Even though there's a slight accent for most of us who are not from there, we think it's an accent. When you're looking to study in the UK, it's a very focused course of study. So this is not the kind of place where anyone can go to explore different courses of study. Probably similar to some courses in Bhutan. Once you start in this course of study, if you change your mind, you have to start all over. So unlike we've talked and we've heard from a couple of universities like in Australia and in the US and Canada, these are places where you can change your mind and you won't lose track of time. The UK is not like that. Once you get started, you have to continue in that area of the study, or you change your mind or you leave. One of the best features, I think, of this highly focused nature is that most of the courses are 3 years long. So for people who don't want to spend 4 years in university, this is an opportunity to kind of essentially fast track. Of course, if you're studying medicine, you will get your undergraduate 3-year degree in medicine, then go on to your bachelor's, your master's, and then your residency, all of that continuing study. So when we say courses are 3 years long, we're talking about psychology, business, biochemistry, architecture, engineering, these sorts of courses. The quality of academics very much can be different across different courses in that in that university. So for example, you could have a UK university that's really strong in law or medicine or chemistry or science, and it can be a really terrible university for something like art. And so this is pretty specific to the UK, that it's not just that this is a good university, just some universities are better at different courses than others. And a lot of these courses will involve really, really high levels of independence. And what that means is that you might go to class for maybe 6 or 7 hours a week, but then after that, you have a lot of independent work to be studying, reading, researching, writing papers, meeting with your professors independently. So this is not the kind of environment where you're sitting in a classroom for 14 or 15 hours a week. It's much different. You do a lot of study on your own. And some people really like that idea, and some people really are not interested in that level of independence. So it's just really good to know what you're getting into in terms of the format. Am I advancing? Okay, so applying to a course, when you are looking to, and we're going to talk about resources and ways to research these courses in a second, but when you're looking at specific courses, now that you know that they are more specific to what you want to study, so political science, business, chemistry, you have to basically show what you've done to prepare. They're really interested in anything you've done to prepare to study that course. So if you've been really influential in your community somehow, and it doesn't relate to your course of study at the time of application, people really aren't interested in that. What they want to know is that you have chosen the academic courses that relate to what you want to study. So some courses are combined, and that is happening a little bit more so in the UK in recent years. So some courses at some universities will combine business with psychology or economics and international relations. But most of the time, like I said, these are separate from each other. I think, going down to that next point, 4 years in Scotland, I should have said previously, but a lot of Scottish universities, there aren't a lot of Scottish universities, but most of the universities in Scotland are actually hosting you for 4 years. So that adds on extra time, extra cost, of course, of attendance, but that does give you a little bit of flexibility that you might be able to add more than one course of study. So that is one of the benefits of staying longer in Scotland, is that you can sometimes have 1 or 2 majors courses of study and maybe like a minor, something that we've talked about more with the US standards. One of my favorite parts of studying in the UK, I think by far, is what you'll see this when you're researching, It's sometimes called a sandwich year, sometimes a placement year, sometimes a year in industry. So these three terms, these first three terms are the same thing. So what this means is you would go to class for year 1 and year 2. Year 3 would be an actual paid job, a full-time job in your industry where you're actually making money, like full-time salaried money. So I've worked with a lot of students who have utilized this application route, this path, purposely knowing that they would spend that third year getting that, building their resume, getting the industry experience, but also earning a paycheck. And so sometimes they will use that to offset the cost of attending university, which is, I think, one of the most brilliant things that the UK offers anyone. And most of the fields and the courses of study have these options. So it's a really, really interesting and appealing option, if you ask me. I just think it's a wonderful opportunity. The year abroad would be a traditional, like we've heard from other presenters, if you've been here, a year abroad, meaning you would study in another university somewhere else and you would be paying those fees. So it's not that they're paying you, but you would be paying them. And that's to have another experience in another part of the world. So I already explained the sandwich year. And then when you are applying to the university, like I said, you are applying directly to that course, and that's what they are judging you on. So I just want to be clear on that. It's not one of those like, let's see what you've done and we'll decide if you're worthy. You're telling them, this is what I am fit to study. A couple of more notes on admissions considerations. I would say the qualifications are going to be related to your course. So when you're researching courses, and I'll give you some resources soon, but when you're researching courses, they will tell you exactly what you need. They're very specific based on your leaving qualifications. If I want to study, for example, medicine in the UK, they need to generally know that I've had a high level of math, a high level of chemistry and biology, for example. If I want to study business, they're probably looking for economics, finance related courses, or in your past finance or these types of related studies that you guys have done. Some universities and courses do require extra testing, and these are provided in a number of different formats and ways. I don't want to get too far into this, but some like Cambridge, Oxford, and medicine programs and some mathematical programs do require extra testing. And that's something that they would tell you pretty clearly on the website. You do have to have a reference letter and a personal statement that's part of your application. They're pretty short. The personal statement is about 4,000 characters. Well, it's a maximum of 4,000 characters. And that's about 650 words. And that personal statement is completely focused on why I want to study this thing. And then generally speaking, students are only allowed to apply to a maximum of 5 universities in the UK. So therefore, it becomes really important to research the qualifications that you know that you will be qualified and meet the standards that they have set, that you would be able to study there. It's really not worth applying to universities in the UK that you do not meet the qualifications for, because they will simply reject your application. And then also, kind of likewise, even if you do meet the qualifications, and it's a really competitive program, there could be a little bit of a less chance of acceptance, of course, but just because you meet the qualifications doesn't mean you're automatically guaranteed to get in. So these are just, again, really specific things about the UK that I'm always happy to answer questions about. Okay, really quickly, financing and fees. I think there's a lot of information out here, so I tried to make this as simple and straightforward as possible. So basically, at the minimum, well, I would say at the average, the cost of attending school in the UK per year is around $16,000. Some programs are significantly higher, for example, medicine. Some are lower. So there is a couple of resources that I think are most helpful in looking at potential scholarships. The British Council in particular is really helpful with the information that they share on their website. Also, I just found this recently. It's called the Redden Survey, and it really is, it's so much information. They will put every course of study for every university, and they will update this annually. And when I was looking through the many pages, it was like I don't know, the lowest was around $7,000 US for a number of programs, $8,000 US for the course of study. And then all the way up to, I think, 39,000 US per year. And again, that's more of the medicine and high level professional areas of study. But on average, right now, the number is 16,000 USD per year. Like I said before, the year in industry is one potential way to offset the cost of education. Also, sometimes students are able to work at their university campus. And then also a note about housing is that housing is guaranteed for students at most of the UK campuses we would be looking at. So the residence halls, the dormitories that most university campuses around the world offer. The Netherlands is quite different, so we'll talk about that in a second. But that would probably, the cost of that is usually around $1,000 USD per month when you're looking at living expenses. And the same is true for Netherlands. So just as a way to remember that these are for tuition and fees, and then your living would be separate. I would say the year in industry and working to offset the costs are two of the most helpful pieces of information when thinking about funding, but there are some scholarships that are available. So even if you're looking at programs that are 7 or 8 or 9,000 USD per year, and they're going to give you $2,000 or $3,000 per year to offset some of that cost, that is still going to be a bit helpful in terms of getting that cost to be a little bit lower. And every university website in the UK is really transparent about how much this is going to cost at most. And then I've also found contacts at each of the universities not each of the universities, but contacts at the universities to be really helpful when we have questions. So they're very responsive. The same is true with the Netherlands, very responsive when they're assisting us in understanding how much this will actually cost. So there are home fees and there are international fees. And this is something that when in doubt, we can always reach out to the admissions people to find out more. Last but not least, these are just 3 really helpful resources for anyone who's looking to even just start researching universities and what it would be like to live and study in the UK. The UCAS is where you can find courses, and that's also where you actually apply to school. This is the application platform that the UK uses. It's called UCAS. The British Council, in addition to scholarships, they also have a lot of really great information and offices around the world and contacts around the world that can help you make connections and understand what it's like to live and work and study in the UK. So I would say that resource is second to none. It's really exceptional. And then Discover Uni is another, you can look at fees and funding and courses of study. So these are the top 3 resources that I wanted you to know about. All right. I'll stop there, check the chat. Oh, that's good. Thank you. All right, I don't see any questions about UK, so I'll just keep going with the Netherlands and we'll just do questions at the end. So studying the Netherlands, it's somewhat similar and somewhat different. I think I'll just jump ahead in my own mind and say that one of the most significant differences is that it's a little bit more affordable. We'll get to that, but I think the Netherlands can be probably one of the more affordable places in Europe for international students, and a lot of international students. I think 20% of their students last year were international. So they are very welcome and open to having you. I did find some data that actually 6 students from Bhutan attended or are attending school in the Netherlands, either currently or in this last year. So that could be undergraduate, master's. They have a ton of master's programs, obviously. So I thought 6, that's quite low. Maybe that would make Bhutanese students really appealing when they're reading your applications. I don't know. I'm jumping to conclusions, but that's my biased opinion. Oh, really quickly, I should have mentioned this. In the UK, testing is sometimes required. So English speaking test, we talked about those additional tests for subjects. But they don't require things like the SAT. So I forgot to mention that. Okay, so for the Netherlands, about 60% of their courses are taught in English. So unlike the UK, where 100% of the courses are taught in English, the Netherlands, you really have to be sure that you're looking for programs that are taught in English versus programs that are taught in Dutch. So that's one really differentiating factor that we're looking at between the UK and the Netherlands. But there are over 300 courses offered in English. And the two differentiations that we make here is that we have research universities, and I'll show you a slide. The next slide will help you to visualize this, but there are three-year research universities and four-year universities of applied sciences. There are also university colleges. So these are more liberal arts and honors programs at the research universities. And then there are specialist colleges. So art, design, performance. So these are sort of four different areas of designations that we use when we talk about schools in the Netherlands. And again, you do need to know your intended course of study, but I will say the Netherlands, I think, is much more interdisciplinary. So if you're thinking, for example, like psychology, philosophy, economics, and finding some sort of overlap between these kinds of topics, you might be able to find that a little bit easier in the Netherlands, but it's still going to feel pretty strict in terms of this is what I'm getting into and this is what I know I want to study. Some programs are really, really selective. So for example, there are only 2 medicine programs in all of Netherlands that accept foreign international students. And even that, after your first 2 years of studying medicine in the Netherlands, you would have to switch to Dutch language speaking. So it makes programs like this pretty hard for students who don't want to or will not plan to learn Dutch. And some of the other highly selective programs can be business, psychology, these sorts of international relations, I think. So it's just something to be aware of. And they will tell us on the website exactly if the program is competitive or if it's open to everyone who applies, that sort of thing. Housing is a huge issue in the Netherlands. So this is one thing that I want to be sure that people are pretty clear on, is that housing is not provided by all universities, and a lot of universities do not provide it at all. So it's you can even Google it. It will come up pretty quickly. Like there's been a housing shortage. It can be pretty stressful. It's relatively affordable, sharing space, having roommates. It can be living costs under, I don't know, maybe 800 a month. But to find roommates and to find housing around the university that you're studying in can be sort of stressful. So it's just really something to be aware of. Also, though you can work part-time during the school year, international students can work up to 16 hours per week in a paid job. And then in the summer, you can actually be, by Dutch law, you can be a full-time employee and you can have internships while you're in university. There are ways to earn money when you are a student in the Netherlands. So I also think that that's really beneficial and helpful to remember when you're thinking possibly about studying abroad, because not every country lets you work there. So it's just something to know. Okay, so I won't go through all of these details, but when I look at this table, I just want to really focus on that bottom line. So when you're thinking of research universities, that 3-year degree, these are like the courses are listed there, some examples: liberal arts, engineering, humanities. And then you look at the 4-year bachelor, these are more people who are training for higher vocational specific professions. So nursing, physical therapy, teaching, dentistry. I think the designation between 3 and 4 years, again, really important, because to spend an extra year of doing something, for example, and paying that kind of international fee structure that we'll talk about, it doesn't make a whole lot of a sense if you might not plan to stay in that country, or if you can train to be a nurse in your own country for significantly less money. I think what is most appealing to me when I think of international students is that 3-year bachelor degree that you can have at a relatively affordable price that maybe you can't get somewhere else. So, or you're more interested in, say, liberal arts, and you can get that in the Netherlands. Yeah. So here for the admissions consideration, the most important thing is actually that you have or will earn a diploma. So oftentimes when you're applying to universities in the Netherlands, they simply want to know that you will be earning a diploma from the country where you're living. Some programs do require very specific subjects. Usually it's high-level math or science. So for example, if you want to be an engineer and you don't have the highest level of physics or math, they will sometimes have you take a test to see if your knowledge is good enough to study. before you get there. So it's not at the time of application, but basically before you show up, they need to know that if you're missing the highest level of that subject in your country, that you know that you'll be able to handle it. And they usually give you a test for that. Your grade point average, test scores, these are not a factor. They do want to know that you speak an adequate level of English, and they will give you several ways to meet that. Some will accept TOEFL, IELTS. I think some will accept Duolingo, and that's definitely getting more popular. But English speaking is really important, of course, when you're applying to an English speaking course of study. And you do apply separately to each school. And like I said, some programs are very highly selective, and you would have to go through a selection procedure. So an interview, an exam, this sort of thing. Fees and financing, I tried to do the best I could just to wrap this up. I think the most important pieces of this are the first and the third. Unless anyone on this call is an EU or Swiss or EEA citizen, you'll see that the cost and fee for those people, for those passport holders, is fairly cheap. And same for students who hold a Dutch passport. For non-EU or EEA citizens, so that's probably most of us on this call, usually that ranges from about 7,000 to 17,000 USD. And again, that living and housing fees is roughly, this is just based on, when we talk about living and fees, as you know, if you've been on these calls, we're talking about housing, food, books, travel, that can range from 12 to 14. It's sort of an estimate that they give USD per year. And then some programs are actually a little bit cheaper. Some programs charge as low as 3,400 to 5,500 USD per year. And some of those are those university colleges. So liberal arts, some of these economics, philosophy, psychology, these kinds of programs, global politics, international relations. So to me, I think it's worth a look. It's, I think, at least worth time to see and investigate if some of the university colleges actually have what you want to study and what if the fees might be fairly low. I guess when I say fairly low, I mean compared to some of the US schools that we see being 70 or 75,000 USD per year. So again, these are the very basics of the fees and financing. I didn't want to get too deep into that, but on every website, they should have very transparent, clear information on those fees. And then also on this next page, I did include some financing options at the bottom. So the study in Holland and the DUONL. There's one other that I left out. I'll add this when we upload to the portal. It's called NUFFIC, N-U-F-F-I-C. But study in Netherlands, the study finder, the fees and financing links, I'll share all of that when we upload this. But they do have some information about financing for international students in terms of working and offsetting the cost of education, which I think would be helpful if you're interested in learning more. And then the rest of Europe. This is my last slide. So I'm laughing because it's actually really hard, I think, to summarize the rest of Europe in one phone call. So what I tried to do is just give you the very basics. So what you need to know about the rest of Europe is that a lot of countries really favor their own residents. Like if you're thinking of like public schools in Bhutan, you probably don't get a lot of international students. Public universities in Bhutan and in most countries are meant to serve the residents of those countries. So a small percentage of each of the rest of the European countries do have English speaking programs, but they're just not as many. And the fees will likely be in line with the UK averages or higher. And so a couple of examples that some students will sometimes look at would be the American universities abroad. And American universities abroad, the cost would be much, much higher than even the UK and Netherlands, like we've been talking about today. These are US university prices with scholarship opportunities and all of the things that come with the American system. And then some people will look in parts of Europe for specific business schools. I've listed a few. IE and ESADE are both in Spain, and Bocconi is in Italy. These are just three really popular business schools that are pretty well known around the world. And then there are some art schools in Rome, Paris, Florence, these places. I will say there are, you might have heard of a number of US universities that have satellite campuses, like NYU, Abu Dhabi, or Georgetown, I think Georgetown has a campus in Qatar. Duke has a campus, I think, in Japan. So sometimes these types of American schools will have programs in other parts of the world, and they're not necessarily cheaper or that sort of thing. They have campuses in these parts of the world. The main resource that I use in searching for programs is called Unicast, and I put the little sticker on there. It's easy to find online, but you can search for programs in English in different countries, and you can see like some medicine or veterinary or dentistry programs. And I think the Unicast website is probably the most important if you're thinking about the rest of Europe. I will say living in Switzerland in particular, it's very similar to what I said before, is that it's really quite hard, I think, to find schools here that make much sense for people who don't speak German, for example. They have a very strict German speaking or French speaking or Italian speaking requirement that makes most Swiss schools pretty not, desirable for people coming from other parts of the country. So I will leave Europe at that because it's just much too hard, I think, to cover in this short time frame. So that is it for my presentation. I don't know why I can't click to the next screen as usual. The next screen is just questions and answers. So, okay, are there any questions that people have either put into the chat, or if you want to unmute, oh, there's my Q&A. If you want to, thank you, Tinley, for sharing that about myself. I've put my email again. Always happy to answer questions and work with students. But yeah, any questions or things that come up that I can try to answer today? I feel like I'm just talking to myself, and I know there's people on the call.
We can hear you, Mallisa.
Thank you. It's okay if there are no questions. I think what's most important as I'm thinking about this topic and just how this works for international students is that I really think the Netherlands is a little bit more, I guess, if it were me coming from Bhutan, I think I would put a little bit more of my effort into the Netherlands. I think it's a bit affordable. It's very high quality education. And yeah, how often are scholarships given to students from other countries? I guess I'll start with the UK first. As you may or may not imagine, the Brexit situation has really impacted the cost of education in the UK in the last few years. And so scholarships in the UK aren't really a thing. They never really have been. And even if they're growing in popularity, I don't really, for me, I would be pretty careful. And I'm happy to work with people individually and do this kind of research. It takes a lot of time and energy, but I think I don't count on scholarships at all when I'm looking at the cost of education in the UK. I look at passports, it's either UK or non-UK. And when I look at the cost of education, I think scholarships are not really a big thing in the UK. In the Netherlands, same. They're just not as popular. But then again, for anybody who's been on any of the calls with Canada, Australia, the US, even when we're looking at some of the initial costs, some of those initial costs are still quite comparably lower. So I do have some scholarship resources, and there are a lot more available, but the ones that I put in the presentation today should be somewhat helpful in trying to understand that. But I hesitate to say that they're really popular or you can count on them, I guess. Okay, so
I think a lot of students here in Bhutan I think irrespective of the location, a lot of them look for full scholarship programs, but
Yep.
I think there should be a disclaimer that once you get enrolled in a university there, you can get an opportunity to work as well. So
Yeah.
that way you can afford the tuitions.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing too. I'm really like, I hesitate to say that I actually think that these countries, in particular, the Netherlands and the UK, for certain programs could be, I would say, arguably the most affordable location for a student coming from Bhutan, in that you can work to offset the cost, especially, I mean, the Netherlands has this as well. The Netherlands has internship programs, paid internships. Same with that UK, the year in industry, which I think if I had a child, if I had a student and I was living in a, part of the country where they might be looking to go abroad, that year in industry or the ability to work and offset the cost of university education is massive. I mean, I think it's something that, all things considered, if you're applying to universities around the world, the UK and the Netherlands the applications themselves aren't that difficult to complete. And you could go through the process at universities that you think could be affordable to you, and then see what every opportunity could be once you're there to earn that money. Paid positions on campus, off campus, internships, summer placement opportunities. Both of these countries are really, really good at placing their students in industry. So I think that's something that's really massively different than when you're looking at most other countries. So,
Okay.
Mallisa,
yeah.
Karma, you didn't had a question, but it was, I think, mistakenly sent to me as a direct message, and I couldn't figure out how to copy and paste. So I'll just
Oh,
read out her
yeah.
thing. She says, I studied diploma in general nursing at midwifery. I'm interested to pursue a bachelor's in nursing. How many years do I have to study?
It's usually 3. Yeah. So usually it would be 3. And thank you for that comment too. So I mean, being careful to make the statement about, there's a comment about being able to pay for your tuition from working as a student. I mean, it is highly dependent on so many factors. So if you get a job, what kind of job? I just know that for the UK in particular and the Netherlands, when you can take a year off, if that happens, I mean, this is far into the future for anybody, but if you are able to take advantage of an opportunity that you can work in the country and you can make money, it all depends on so many factors. So it's absolutely true. And I think, yeah, everybody should be careful knowing that, you go into you shouldn't commit yourself to a situation where you may or may not be able to pay that. So that's a good point. Anything else? Any other
From anyone?
questions? So when is our next presentation? If there are no other questions, I'll just go back to where we started. So February 1st, test optional emissions in the US. Reminder, please feel free to reach out if you have questions. If you need anything, I'm here to help. Thank you for joining. I won't keep us on the call any longer than we need to. Hopefully I covered the basic understanding of these countries today.
Yes, you did, Mallisa.
Thank you, Srijana.
Okay.
I hope everybody has a good day and a good week. What day is it? It's only Tuesday. I'm losing track already. I guess we could stop the recording.